Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good day.
Good heavens.
Good night.
Good to be here.
Good trousers.
Goodmans.
Good point.
Oh, goodness.
Loch Ness. I could
Well
see.
done.
I could see you were
You
losing
could
it.
see it. You could see it. I was losing it. This is the Benji and Nick Show, your number one show for vintage television from the known world. From the known world, in the known world. We go over old TV. Right. We have a look at it. We basically watch it to see and give you an opinion as to whether you should watch it or not. Really, we're kind of saving you time. Basically. We're kind of we're coming out here saving you some time.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the Time Savers podcast. That was the Loch Ness game. It's not a game. It's not about Loch Ness. And I'm not Benji.
And I'm not Nick. This week we are doing a family at war. Family at war. 1970s drama. All about, you guessed it, a family at war. It's a play on words. It's a family in the war, but it's also a family at war with itself almost. It's
in the Second World War in Liverpool from 1938 through to 1946, was it? I don't know. We've only watched the first few episodes, haven't we?
We certainly have, yeah. And it chronicles all through the war, I believe.
It does.
It's like Goodnight, Sweetheart, but more serious.
Yeah, not so funny.
Although, funny.
You know, and Shelley Dean, our podcast host from over the seas, will be joining us to talk about that after we have done the email sent to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. It may not have escaped your attention, regular listeners, that the Benji and Nick show will be finishing. The last podcast should be going out on the 5th of September, I believe. I think that's a Sunday.
September, yeah, that's correct. That's the final shebang. The final shebang.
And it is with a heavy heart that we proceed towards that. I mean, we've loved doing it, but, you know, things have to move on for Benji and me because we're working so hard on other things. And anyway, we've done all that, but we have a few emails about it. Shall I read out the first one? I think because
I would love you to. Yeah,
would
absolutely.
I
would. I'd love it. Yeah.
I bet you'd love that, wouldn't you? Right.
Love that, wouldn't you?
This is sent from Miles Parrish. Almost certainly my last email. Hi, Benji, Nick and Shelley. Thank you for reading out my most recent email and for the wonderful discussion which ensued. I skipped ahead to the latest podcast and was very touched. Oh, he's been catching up, you see. Last week, my epic listen through of the podcast, I reached the debut of Shelley Dean, and it would be remiss of me not to write and say, Shelley, you are wonderful. She won't hear that. Your insights as someone who is coming to so much on the Benji and Nick show, of obscure UK cultural touchstone television archive without the cultural touchstone part, brings a great new angle to a lot of things that those of us in the UK, or in my case, Australia, take for granted. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your thoughts as I continue my listening marathon. Between the three of you, you convinced me to give the BBC TV version of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy another look. I first tried it as a teenager, having read the book, and didn't really get into it. But after listening to the podcast, I put on the DVD and binged 3 episodes in one go. It wasn't almost midnight. If it wasn't almost midnight, I would have watched the whole lot. The podcasting firmament will be weaker for the departure of you three from the airwaves. I'm a trade union official. Good on you. So I have a lot of challenging days. Podcasts in the car between site visits help lighten the mood. Sorry, this is written in very small text in blue on my screen, so I'm having real trouble reading it. Once again, thanks for all you've done and for helping fill even the toughest days with laughter and smiles. All the best, Miles Parrish. Miles, that is a lovely email. Thank you so much for sending it.
Certainly was. Thank you so much. There wasn't a delay there, by the way, Nick. That was just me taking ages to reply.
Yeah, no, I thought so. It's like you were just sitting there in your chair with a pipe.
I was just thinking. I've got another one here from Nathan Martin. Hello, Nathan. Hello. Hi, Benji, Nick, and Shelley. Firstly, I just wanted to say how sad I was to hear the podcast is ending. Benji and Nick show is a special and magical thing to all of us listeners, and I, for one, am going to miss it immensely. Thank you for all the entertaining chats and tangents, all the extra Patreon content, and the community you built up around the podcast. Although I loved all the extra content, in the end, it was the community that made the Patreon worth it for me. My only regret being that I didn't overcome my shyness and join the Loch Ness tier before the end. these things happen,
If only you'd done
unfortunately.
that, we would have carried on. It's all on you, Mike. It's not Mike. Sorry. I'm looking at another email from someone called Mike. Sorry.
Thinking about Buck Rogers reminded me of an anecdote that my dad likes to tell anyone who will listen. Dads are like that. He loves to point out how he was forced to turn off Doctor Who and endure weeks of Buck Rogers instead because I was once too scared to watch my now cherished program.
Good Lord.
I checked the facts, and it turns out that Doctor Who season 18 and Buck Rogers both began airing on my birthday, which has me wondering what could possibly have scared 4-year-old me so badly, as I didn't remember this. Intrigued. I asked my dad, and his helpful answer was, I think it was a green monster. Maybe as an experiment, I needed to sit down for a season 18 marathon with my 3-year-old son and see what he thinks. You never know.
It's
Anyway,
the Marcy, isn't it? Who were the aliens in the beginning of that season?
Correct. You get yourself you get a silver owl for that, Nick, and whatever that means. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to ask you if you remember anything particularly scaring you as a child when you watched Doctor Who. Although I can't remember what it was that forced us to switch over to Buck Rogers in 1980, I do remember being absolutely petrified of a couple of years later by Valentine Dyal's performance as the Black Guardian in Mordred Undead.
Yes,
I absolutely love Mordred Undead, by the way.
Pardon? Pardon? I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I said I love that story, by the way.
Which one?
Sorry, the Mordred Undead. I enjoy the story.
Oh, well, he's in more than Mordred Undead.
I know, but I'm just saying I enjoyed Mordred Undead. I just like Mordred Undead. That's all.
Mordred Undead.
Undead. I'm just talking. That's all. I talk, you see. I'll keep my fingers crossed that perhaps there might be the odd Benji and Nick show special with added Shelley Dean once you feel more on top of your respective workloads. Thanks again for everything to the whole team, Benji, Nick, Shelley, and Steph. Hondo. Hondo.
Oh, that brings back fond memories. I wish I knew how to make this text larger. Having real trouble reading. Hold on a sec. Maybe if I just
get a magnifying glass and it'll work.
I cut and paste it into a Word file. That should do the trick, shouldn't it?
Word.
When I say Word, I mean pages, actually. There we go. Right. I'm putting it in here. And then I'm going to zoom into it. Like this. Oh, now I'm really happy. So this one is called Fare Thee Well. From that you did was a bit like the beginning of the Peter Capaldi Doctor Who theme, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Mike Lacey says Fare Thee Well, and this was, we forgot to say when they were sent. Goodness me, we're really out of practice. It was sent on the 10th of the 8th in the year 2235 in the future. Dear Benji, Nick and Shelley, I'm sad that the Benji and Nick show featuring Shelley Dean will be coming to an end. It's been a weekly bright spot for a few years now, entertaining me during boring days at work, calming me during chaotic days at work, and helping me get through COVID lockdowns and the stress of a recent job change. But I can understand why you made the decision. I always wondered how you found the time to do the podcast, the extra content for Patreon that I regretfully never joined. God, what? Along with all your work at Big Finish, your projects outside of Big Finish, and still have time left for your family and friends. Well, we didn't. Before you go, I'd like to suggest a show for you to review. I've recently been watching some older shows with Peter Davison, including A Very Peculiar Practice and At Home with the Braithwaites. If I had to pick one, it would be At Home with the Braithwaites. I'm the opposite. I'd pick with Very Peculiar Practice. I didn't like At Home with the Braithwaites, although watching just the first episode wouldn't do it justice. I've been binge watching it because it's so addictive, and every episode ends with a bombshell that makes you want to continue watching. It reminds me a little of Breaking Bad, really, in that everyone has secrets and their lives are in a constant downward spiral. Just when you think things can't get any worse, they do. That's a harsh way to speak about Peter Davison. I'm only halfway through series 3, but I'm curious about why the last 4 episodes of the final series were not written by the show's creator, Sally Wainwright, who wrote all of the other episodes. I don't know if you have any insights on that, or if Peter Davison might know. Oh, I might ask him one day. Well, that's enough of my review. I look forward to your remaining podcasts, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for the smiles and memories. Sincerely, Mike Lacey. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike, for that one. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Well, it's at this particular time that we usually invite Shelley Dean. I will get on the
You're going
inviter
to?
right now.
Sounds like you weren't going to this time. I would say a very peculiar practice. I wouldn't mind us watching that.
That could be fun. I'm all for that. I'm all for a very peculiar practice.
Have you ever seen it?
Years ago. I don't really have any opinion or memories of it, really.
It's
That's
really
certainly
brilliant,
something.
actually. I think it's the best
something
thing
that
Peter Davison's ever done, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
What? Taking into account Doctor Who as well?
Controversially, yes.
Oh, it's got Barbara Flynn in it, hasn't
Barbara
it?
Flynn, David Troughton. I mean,
Oh
what's
yeah.
not to
What
love?
more
And
do you
David
want?
Troughton is absolutely stupendous in it.
He's stupendous in everything he does, though, isn't he? To be honest, Barbara Flynn as well.
Amazing. Who, of course, is in A Family at War, playing the young daughter, isn't she?
She certainly is, and we'll talk about that at the moment. Fire up the Shellinator, because here's Shelley Dean.
Da, da, da.
The Shellinator.
I don't know what a Shellinator is, but whatever
I don't know, but they're on sale at nicholasbriggs.com/shop.
Yes. Yes. Are you enjoying your day today?
I haven't been awake for very long. It's very early for me, so
okay. So
yeah.
all good so far.
So far, so good. Yes, the rest of the day could, they could just all collapse into the Shellinator as
before we get started on A Family at War.
Yes.
Presumably you'll tell us something about that.
I will.
Benji, shall we have a look at the last Loch Ness live lounge, or have a listen to it in this case?
Well, that'd be rude not to. Here we go. Here we are. This is Loch Ness Live, and this is the final Loch Ness Live gaming edition. I don't know why I said that, but we're playing Loch Ness based. There's a lot of never do I. There's a lot of people here. We are going to go. No, we're not starting again. This is not. You should know by now. This is how we do things. We get it terrifically wrong, and it's wonderful. Now, I'm thinking. I assume that the screen is the same for everybody. I'm thinking we go around clockwise. You see, from myself for this Loch Ness game, it's rather wonderful. We have to basically ignore Shelley because she's not playing, and Chris, who is in the middle, is going to be refereeing. We're essentially like the Brady Bunch, aren't we? All of us at the moment, or we look a bit like the Muppets, don't we? You know, in the opening. I'm Gonzo. The rules are very simple. It's Loch Ness. We have to continue a good something. And when you lose, you crash out, and we simply carry on until there is only one winner.
You say goodness. You say
Michael
goodness.
winner, and goodness. Yeah, goodness is kind of goodness. Loch Ness. We continue. There's only one. You'll get the idea.
That makes perfect sense. I think
it does. It does. Remember, everybody, when you do say goodness, do go close to your microphones. It just helps to that. So. Yes. Without further ado, is everybody ready? Chris, our referee, are you ready to adjudicate?
Yes, and I'll try not to fail this time.
That would help. So, without further ado, good morning.
Good day.
Good night.
Hey,
sorry.
Oh, it's a full start.
That's anti-clockwise.
That's anti-clockwise.
So Benji,
he's
Nick,
below the equator.
me, Hannah, Carl. Yes.
Correct.
Oh no, I've got Benji, me, Colin, Hannah, Carl. Is that what you said?
But that's what you said, yeah.
Hold on a minute.
Out halfway through.
I've got me, Nick, Colin, Hannah, and Carl. Is that what you?
Hold on. I thought that it was.
Hold on a minute. Okay.
He's moving the screens around.
We'll start again. Here we go. What was I going to say? No. Good morning.
Good day.
Good night.
Good evening.
Good oil.
Good to be here.
Good point.
Good year.
Good plaid.
Good tidings.
Good heavens.
Good trousers.
Good idea.
Good googly moogly.
Good gravy.
Goodman, John.
Goodness.
He says with conviction.
Loch Ness.
Good enough.
Good heavens.
Oh, that was that. I think that might have been a hesitation. Chris, what do you think?
Chris?
Oh, well, I think just in time, but like next time.
Okay. Carl?
Good coffee.
Official warning.
What was that, Carl? Sorry?
Good coffee.
Good tea.
Good golly, Miss Marley.
Good book.
Good dog.
Good marmalade.
Good grief.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Ooh!
Collins, on you.
Good boy.
Oh, goodness.
Good, so, me? Goodwood.
Revival.
Goodwill Hunting.
Good times. Is it me?
Good King Wenceslas.
Good versus evil.
Good news.
Good call.
Good vibrations.
Good housekeeping.
Good to be here.
Good food guide.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hey, Colin.
Mr. C, well done, sir.
Hey,
Well
there you
done,
go.
sir.
It's
Good
it's
instinct.
tragic actually because I feel somehow that it means the most to Carl.
Go again.
He's gonna smash all those bottles behind him.
Just one at
Yeah.
a
No,
time.
I'm gonna drink all of them again.
Starting with
wasn't
the
that
Russian. Yeah.
Marvelous.
Yes, and it's not even 6:15 in the morning.
Have it with your
Congratulations to
cornflakes.
Colin.
What?
Yeah, have it on the cook exactly.
Lemmy used to have whiskey with his cornflakes, didn't he?
Did you want to
Yeah.
end the recording though, Benji?
Yes. Thank you, everybody, and good night. Way, there we go.
So I thought it ran long, but no, I reminded you to switch it off.
That's very clever of you. Very clever.
That was one of the little top perks available to our top tier Patreon followers when we did that in the mists of time a couple of weeks ago. And we used to do that every month. And there we
Yeah.
are. That was the last one. A historic moment. If you've just listened to it, you can count yourself among the few lucky 3 people who've ever heard that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the nice things about that, and my particular thing that I liked, is that when we've run these Loch Ness gatherings, is that when we've left to do things, in the end, this sort of forum stays open, and the Loch Nessers, as I like to call them,
Yes.
will stay and continue the chat, which is so
They have their
nice.
own after party.
They do. They
It's
do.
amazing.
They
We've
even came up with
deprived them of that.
ideas for their own podcasts. They came up with ideas for merchandise.
Good on them. Good
Yes,
on them. I say,
yes.
why not? I give you all the blessings and all of the luck in doing that. It's an enjoyable
Our
thing.
worthy
podcasting, isn't it?
successors.
Our worthy successes. You can sit in this chair. Actually, you can't because I'm sitting in it. But if I wasn't, you could sit in it. Well, this week we're talking about a family at war.
Yes.
It's yeah, little castle, the flag.
Yes.
A bit of Vaughan Williams music playing. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
That was the
Family
flag
at War
flapping.
is a British drama series that aired on ITV from 1970, a very good year, to 1972 with 52 episodes in total. It was created by John Finch and made by Granada Television. The series examined the lives of the lower middle class Ashton family. Say that fast 3 times. Of the city of Liverpool and their experiences from 1938 through the Second World War. And we watched the first 2 episodes because, as Benji said, the first episode was very talky.
Yeah, definitely very, very different. I enjoyed the talkiness, but
Yes.
I was thinking from your perspective, Shelley, that, and for listeners as well that
Yeah.
are into faster paced things, it might be a bit full on, which is why episode 2 is quite a good departure from that.
Yes. Well, it was definitely, I'm glad that I went on to the second episode because the first one I was just, I was left a little befuddled because it was basically just your setup pilot episode of a show that you're just learning who the characters are and you're kind of left with, okay, so where are we going to go with from here? And I watched the second episode and I enjoyed it so much. I'm now on to the 4th episode. So I've gone on ahead because I was enjoying it. I didn't care so much about the people the first episode. I was like, who are they? Why should
Yeah,
I
I'm
care?
exactly the same, actually.
And
I'm with you
then
there.
I kind of, as I started, you kind of got to know them a little bit more, as you do with
Yeah,
an episodic television series.
exactly.
I started to really care about them. So I wanted to go, okay, so I need to know what happens to them. So I have continued on with it.
Yeah, I'm on episode 5 actually.
Oh,
And I have watched a load of them in recent years because I bought the DVD sets for my mum. But quite a while back, I think, shortly after my father died, which is back in 2004, I gave her lots of DVD. I bought her anything I saw that I thought was good to watch. I'd,
yeah.
hand her that. She's now forgotten how to use her DVD machine. It's been so many years since she watched one. I said, why don't you watch a DVD? She said, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember it from the time I was, old enough to watch my parents' shows in the evening sometimes. And I remember thinking as a kid that it was a bit talky, but, and this is in a way why it doesn't surprise me that you weren't that fond of the first episode, Shelley, because it reminded me of the thrill I got when I watched that first episode of Z Cars, because even though not much happens, I just find the intensity of the character work and the deftness of the writing so entrancing. John Finch, who wrote it, is like a giant of British television from the 60s and 70s. He was the first freelance writer of Coronation Street, and he later became the editor, then producer of Coronation Street, which is, this country's biggest, longest running soap opera and still beloved of the nation. And he also wrote lots of other big series. Another big one he wrote was called Sam, which was about a young boy in Yorkshire, I think, who grows up to be a miner, and it follows his whole life. And it's real. What basically, when I was talking to my wife about this and Sam, she said he likes social history, basically. And I said, yeah, that's actually it. And as I've got older, I've become more and more engaged with social history. So I absolutely loved it and found it really, really engaging. But I'll go straight in after all that niceness with my main criticism of it, which is why it will get one exclamation mark less than I was intending, is the accents annoy me because the accents are almost all wrong.
They're all over the place.
Even I
Liverpool.
noticed that.
They're
Even
in
I
Liverpool.
noticed that because they were talking. I was like, they're supposed to be in Liverpool, and they don't sound like the Beatles. Like, so that for me was my Liverpoolian accent gauge.
As far as I can gather, only one character. What's his name? Was it David, the useless son,
The annoying one that, David,
whose whole life has gone wrong, and he ends up joining the RAF, and then his life is transformed. But he is the only one speaking with a Liverpudlian accent. Nobody else in that production.
Yeah.
I mean, all of them. Some of them are doing general Northern, and then others are doing what I'd like to call intermittent Northern. Like the woman, a very strong main character in it, Maggie, the sister who doesn't like to be called Maggie.
I was going to say it's Margaret.
Yeah, her Northern accent is atrocious.
Yeah.
She has so many really dominant Southern sounds in her accent. It's really interesting that Granada Television should produce something like this. And I don't know whether they were thinking about the international market and thinking maybe the Liverpudlian accent would be too strong. I don't know. But anyway, that's my only criticism of it.
No, I think that's an absolutely fair criticism as well.
Because if it takes you out of the moment while you're watching it to stop and go, hey, wait a minute, that's the wrong accent. That's a problem.
Yeah, you got to wait until Patrick Troughton comes into it.
Oh, he was in it for 3 minutes, like a second during the wedding.
Oh, well, it's hilarious the way his accent is. It's about 2% there. I mean, mostly it just sounds like Patrick Troughton, and every now and again he goes, "Oh, come on, love," and he goes, "Hello." But it obviously wasn't a requirement. No, there was no one saying you must get the accent right.
I think, and I'm going to be honest here, I think it's because it was the 70s, and I think they just couldn't be asked. I think that's the truth.
They were too drunk.
They were too drunk and just too busy doing other things, which is fine.
Bay City Rollers, yes.
But it's a good drama. What is nice about it is it does have the power to captivate you with just words. That. I mean, the second episode there are some actions and there's some great stuff in there. There's some terrific characters. But a lot of the time, you're just pulled in by the performances and by like you say, Nick, the word intensity comes to mind. You want to find out more and you want to see how these characters go. I mean, even minor characters like I can't remember if he was in the second episode or not. I think he was. Is it the Welsh chap, Wynne?
Yeah,
the
the
windbag, yes.
roommate from Oxford. Yeah.
But I really enjoyed him as as an actor as well. I really liked what he did in it, and I wanted more of that character. And I thought, well, that's just a minor character. It's got a great energy about it. It's a fantastic. I've been dying to watch this for so long because I've heard so many good reviews about it, and it doesn't let you down, I have to say.
The rhythms of speech are brilliant, actually. And I do that theme tune. I remember Mark Gatiss saying to me, he said, when you just hear that Vaughan Williams music and see that flag in the sand castle, just breaks your heart.
Yeah.
It's so poignant, isn't it? This, and as well, at that particular time, isn't it interesting as well? I mean, it's always done in films and TV where it still always affects me, is that level of not complacency, but that level of, it'll all be over by Christmas. Like it's all, this is
About
nothing
the
to
war,
be.
yes, yeah.
The war is nothing to be worried about if it happens at all. And you've got the people saying, no, it's real this time.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of, I suppose our version of this is the sort of COVID-19 scenario, in the sense that, like, I remember before all that kicked off and this stuff in Wuhan, and they had the articles being shared about how this is really bad, and people say, oh no, it's fine, it'll all be sorted out, it's fine, it's all to blow over, it's nothing.
I said that. I said, goodness me, 20,000 people die from flu every year, and only 300 people have died. Yeah. Well,
and it's that same thing, isn't
up.
it? It's exactly, it's the same thing, isn't it? It's it's this war will be over by Christmas. It's all just politicians there. Hitler's, he'll just stop doing what he's doing, blah, blah. It doesn't go that way.
Well, what we're talking about here is something called dramatic irony. And dramatic irony is when the audience knows something that the characters don't. So we watch this with huge dramatic irony being engaged upon, because it's just, we think, no, and we can hear that these people are on the precipice of something appalling, and yet they think life's going to be all right. And that's fascinating and very engaging to watch, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, their decisions in this early episode, like you say, Nick, really, about work and money and life and things like that, that will all just fade into insignificance, really, when you come under the blanket of war and all of the troubles that brings with it. It's a whole different kettle of fish. But it's just brilliant. I love the chap who plays the father.
Yeah, well, he ends up in Doctor Who, doesn't he? In Horror of Fang Rock, he's Reuben,
yes, he does.
His name is Colin Douglas.
Yeah,
Colin Douglas.
That's right. He always plays guys like that. He did.
He's splendid, isn't he?
Yeah, and funny enough, I had to look up to see how old the people that were playing the parents were.
Oh yeah.
And the mom, the actress, was 50. But when they filmed it, she was probably about 48, 49, because I did a lot of research about it, obviously. And they had to film they were filming way before it actually went to air because of the production schedule. Because it was a 2-year run, and there's 52 episodes. So they were in a constant production.
Wow.
With rehearsals and leading up to, and then blocking and bringing in the film crew and all that stuff. So so she was about 50, my age. And
they all looked older.
Of course, she looked about 70. So, and then the dad was 58, so about 56, 57 when they filmed it, which is just, you see that, and it always makes me think that people just lived so much harder back then, because
they didn't have good
and the one son,
the diet was worse, the healthcare was worse.
The one son who was going to Oxford, he was supposed to be 21, and he looked about 35.
I think smoking has a lot to do with it, though.
Keith Drinkell, I think, as well. Keith Drinkell, who ended up in a Doctor Who episode in Time Flight, I believe. And I've also met him as well. He was in one of our
Yeah,
first
he did a
companion
bunch
role
of
with
big
the
Finish productions.
Yeah.
According to Wikipedia, Doctor
Yeah.
Who, Catch 1782, Sapphire and Steel, The School and Professor, Bernice Summerfield. Oh, wait, there's no commas here. Bernice Summerfield, Timeless Passages. Yeah, I'm like, wait, those are different sentences. I copied and pasted it. So,
there are two other things I want to say. That one of the reasons I liked it and sort of liked it at the time as too young a person to be watching it is because it reminded me of all the stories my grandparents and parents were telling me, because my grandparents and parents talked a lot about the war because
yeah.
it had been a hugely significant experience in their lives. You know, my parents were sort of early teenagers during the war, so they remembered it really vividly, and it had defined my grandmother and grandfather. You know, they everything they talked about was to do with the war. You know, so
It
it
would, wouldn't
reminded
it?
me of that. So it felt very comforting. The other thing is something you mentioned to me, Benji, just in passing before the podcast a few days ago. You said you can see an Englishman's castle in this. And the
Definitely.
Family at War series, we reviewed something called An Englishman's Castle, Shelley,
Mhm.
a couple of years ago, which is what if the Nazis won the war scenario, but it was made
Okay.
in 1977. And the basis of the story is that the main character, played by Kenneth More, is writing a series for television called An Englishman's Castle, which is
Mhm.
about the experience of ordinary people during the Second World War. And he starts getting into difficulty when he writes the bit about the Nazis winning, because he's finding it difficult to toe the party line. But An Englishman's Castle, the show within An Englishman's Castle, is essentially a family at war. It's clearly the writer was thinking of a family at war when it's so similar, isn't it?
Absolutely identical,
Wow.
really. And you can, and you know, perhaps whoever the writer of that was sitting there watching a family in war and thought, imagine, maybe they thought, oh, this is propaganda from a different perspective. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
don't know. But it certainly is interesting, isn't it? But it's, I love anything about history. I was watching a Secret Army today over lunch, actually. In fact, I tweeted about it a moment ago. That made me chuckle because they were. So this is a great episode about where Yvette, one of the women who works for the resistance, she's put in prison, captured by the Germans. I chuckled because when
Really,
the
about her
alarm
being captured by the
when the
Germans?
alarm went when the alarm went off in the prison, it was the same sound effect as the fire bell in 40 Towers. And I was just expecting John Cleese to suddenly go fire, fire, fire.
The standard BBC bell.
But I have
When
to
you
say
said
there was
Germans
something.
there, I wanted to pay homage to a Gene Hackman, who in A Bridge Too Far played, was it a Hungarian character? And he decided incorrectly that they pronounced the word Germans Germans. So he spent the
The
entire film saying,
German.
the Germans are coming. You think, what? Of
Germans.
course, who's going to argue with Gene Hackman? He looks so fierce, doesn't he?
Yeah, he'd snap you in half like a breadstick. But I have to say, there's something about historic dramas in the 1970s that works so well because of the pace. I prefer it because modern things now, you have to cram all this stuff in, and it's great because there's loads of running around and explosions and stuff. But there's a lot to be said for characters sitting around just talking about what's going on.
Well, and it captured that beautiful, very typical of that time English reserve, where people didn't emote. It's watching a really good old-fashioned British drama is the experience of watching characters failing to communicate their emotions correctly, and then a crisis comes where the pressure cooker lid flies off and they go berserk. And that's the basis, I think, of really good drama. Shelley, have you got any more interesting facts? Or
Well, just one thing that I thought was very interesting was that, well, a couple things actually, that there were a lot of actors that turned down their roles
wow.
because they were needed to get the proper haircut.
Oh, of course, because they
And
all have had long hair in the 70s.
yeah, so that actually stopped a lot of actors from taking the roles because they were like, no, I do not want to look like that.
There's a thing now that if you have to get your hair cut, they have to pay you extra.
Yeah, well,
I wonder whether they did that in those days.
probably not. I mean, this, even though this had a higher budget than most things of its time, it I'm sure that wasn't a thing.
It's interesting. It has a high budget. There, even in this, there are mistakes. There are fluffs which they let through, don't they? Because they obviously don't want to do any editing. They just record in 20-minute blocks. Sorry, Shelley, I interrupted.
Oh, well, just as going back onto the haircuts.
Haircut.
Keith Barron, he was one of the actors, bravely took the plunge, but confessed, "I can feel people's eyes on the back of my head. They must think I've been inside." So I'm guessing that a short haircut at that time meant you were in prison. That's kind of,
exactly that. Yes.
Yeah. So that I thought that was interesting. And the series was often criticized for its gloominess, as one critic wrote satirically of its title sequence: "Cue in groaning music, fade up picture of bleak fortress. Time to meet the lovable laugh-a-minute Liverpool gang, the Ashtons." Yeah, and so it's just one of the things that I thought was so interesting about it was the play on words with the title. It was originally supposed to be called Conflict. That was the name of the show.
That's
and
original.
I guess being that it's more negative.
Yeah, but also the conflict and the conflict in the family, it's still the same play on words, isn't
right.
it?
So a family at war.
It doesn't sound as friendly though, does it?
Yeah, it was the double entendre of what was going on.
Brilliant one as well.
And what was so well established, I felt, in the first episode was that conflict between Edwin, the father, and his brother-in-law, who was his boss.
Class conflict, you see.
Yeah, and I thought that was just the way they set that up, I thought was brilliant, because it was so subtle. And yet you just, and he's such an incredible actor, you just sensed his, without even saying anything, it was his physical acting was just how he felt so dehumanized by this relationship he had with his brother-in-law. And the fact that he was overstepped for the position he should have certainly gotten
by a
when
man
the
who
guy
had
died.
no clue
by
how
his
to do the
son,
job,
who
because he
did
was just
nothing. Nepotism.
But the reason his brother-in-law didn't promote him is because he was not of the right social class.
Yes, God forbid. He was the son of a miner, and that was just not okay.
Incredible to think that, isn't it?
And to think that the wife, the mom, was a half owner.
Yeah.
And yet, because she was female, guess
there
what?
was no say.
No say in it.
Oh, well, and it really, I mean, it's interesting to watch the stereotypical offensive treatment of women in this, because we're thinking, oh, yeah, well, they're dramatizing it. But a lot of that would have been completely familiar in the 70s as well. So even though it looks like a drama that's portraying these things as terribly wrong, in a way, at the time, it was portraying them as, a lot of people would have watched that and thought, yeah, fine, that's normal. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Different historical perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but for me personally, getting into the second episode, I knew nothing about the Spanish Civil War.
Oh, right. The rehearsal for World War II.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's Germany's rehearsal.
So watching it, I was like so confused about, why is he there? Why is he fighting? Why did he choose to go back? And the whole thing, the son who was fighting, in the Spanish
It's basically
Civil War.
all the idealists from all around Europe went to go and fight the fascists in Spain.
Right. So I deep dove into some research about finding out what the Spanish Civil War was all about and why there were these, because what I didn't understand was how disorganized that unit was with in the second episode with
the rabble, isn't it? Just
right.
rabble.
And then I realized it was because it wasn't an official unit, because England said, no, we're not getting involved.
Yeah.
They stayed out of it.
That was not the British Army. It was just guys who just picked up guns and went over there. Some of them with military experience, some of them just mercenaries. And then
some
of
of
course
them
you
just
had
crazy fanatics like that guy Parker.
Well, yeah, you have that problem where because of the sort of communist influence, the whole notion of there being an officer structure falls apart. And you start getting that thing where, party members start snitching on or killing their officers. So I mean, crikey.
It was so that was
chaos,
an interesting part for me as an American who might have learned about it in school, but it just didn't stick in my brain because it didn't have any connection to.
I think quite a
Right.
few Americans went to the Spanish Civil War as well, actually.
Probably. I
But of
don't
course,
know.
It's any idealist, isn't it? Really?
Few Americans came over here to fight in the Second World War
Yeah.
before America declared war on
Yeah.
Germany.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Well, a lot of pilots as well. Yeah, American pilots, Canadian pilots, people like that joining the RAF straight away, getting involved. So it's the interesting thing about the Spanish Civil War from the perspective of the Germans is that, of course,
the
because of
Germans.
the Germans, because of the armistice
Germans.
and the treaty agreements,
Thank you,
the
Gene.
Germans weren't allowed an army for years and years and years. It was only Hitler undid that eventually. But of course, what he had
Ding ding.
was no training for there was no training for these troops.
Yeah.
So the Spanish Civil War was the perfect opportunity for him to train his soldiers ready for the big
They
push.
just practiced by massacring Spanish people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
In the eyes of in the name of war. But
There
to
we
go
are.
back to Family War, I think it's terrific, and I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 because it's just so captivating.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 just because I'm reserving 1 until I get through some more episodes.
Good shout.
Yeah.
It's when you get to episode 5, there's a bit where Patrick Troughton's character a woman flirts with him, and he's obviously has a very frustrating, unfulfilling marriage, and he just says, "Oh, come on, love," and tries to kiss this woman, and then she doesn't want to kiss him, and he goes, "Oh, sorry."
And then he's the doctor again.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, love. Sorry.
Where's Jamie?
Jamie. Come on, love, Jamie. Yeah. So I give it 4 exclamation marks because of the accents.
Yeah.
But
good
everything
shout,
else
good shout.
is, that just really irritates me, but not so much as not to watch it. And I will watch
Right.
some.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I'm glad I stuck with it because it really got me interested, and I'm gonna
It
continue
is
to watch
old
it.
fashioned, and it is done in
Oh.
that multi-camera way, and it's a bit creaky, and there are a few mistakes, and yeah.
But once you embrace those elements, I think you're in for a good bit of telly, and there's plenty of it as well.
And when you know those actors are acting for 20-minute chunks at a time, and they're getting it 99.9% right, and a lot of it is very sophisticated. It's not, it's not obvious. It's not just a thriller or something. It's really nuanced stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they've rehearsed well, and it's heartbreaking, and they're still having to do all that. I noticed Barbara Flynn does amazing stuff of repositioning herself in scenes because she's not the most important character, and she does her bit and finds a reason to go somewhere else so that the view is clear to look at the main characters.
I
And
love
all
her.
that went
She's
on
just
all the
great
time.
fun.
She is incredible, isn't she?
I've just got so much time for her, and
She's
even
a
in
lovely
this,
human being, by the way. I've worked with her at Big Finish, and she's
really?
everything you'd want her to be. Yes.
Oh, well, that's probably why she's done so well for herself. But she just seems there's something in herself, and there's something incredibly captivating about her performances, the way in which she does, in everything that she's in. But I love in this, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having more of a story to her.
Yes, I wonder what happens. I think she actually takes over the Third Reich. I think.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, that's a bit of a character.
Women empowerment.
And it all went downhill from there. Well, I think that next week, we should do, as the email said, a very peculiar practice with Peter Davison
and Barbara Flynn.
And Barbara Flynn.
I controversially said
Troughton.
earlier, and David Troughton, sorry, I talked over you. I controversially said earlier, Shelley, that it's the best thing that Peter Davison's ever done. Which, luckily, he doesn't listen to this podcast because I'm sure he'd be massively, although I know he's very, very proud of it. So, but people will be saying, well, what about Doctor Who? I think he is amazing in it. And it's so beautifully written. It's Andrew Davies, isn't it, wrote it?
I'll be able to tell
who
you.
Later got really, really famous for doing Pride and Prejudice on the BBC, adapting it, I should say.
What's it?
It's got such an 80s theme tune, hasn't it?
We love you. Yeah.
A very peculiar
practice.
Yes.
Oh, hello. What's going on here? I've got a phone call. I don't know who it is. So I'm not going to reply.
Yeah, 1986 to 1988. Andrew Davies.
Oh,
a phone is going bananas.
It's stopped now.
Yeah, with the vibrating sound was very loud. It's like,
Yeah, I know it's vibrating through my microphone stand.
Well, based on that, then we'll say our goodbyes. Thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next week for a very peculiar practice.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye.